Hello.
Kia ora, welcome back to Video Drones. Sorry we weren't here last week. My immune system completely shut down, so that was a fun little ride. So that gave us more time though to do some more research on Paul Schrader. So we present to you the Paul Schrader Fest.
We do, and we're going to start with the card counter and then go back to his early films and start from the beginning.
Well, Card Counter is his most recent film. That's why we're sort of starting with that. It came out, what, a year or two ago?
A year ago. It might have been filmed earlier, but with COVID and all that kind of stuff. Actually, yes, it was shut down 5 days before they finished filming, which really fucked Paul Schrader off, because one person in the crew got COVID, and the producers insisted upon shutting it down. Like I think maybe the person had wasn't still on the set, obviously, but the producers were just extra worried about being safe. So Paul Schrader really got really angry with them, but after the editing process, he said it was actually a really good thing because it gave him extra time to think about things and change things.
Better to be safe than sorry in those days too. I mean, we still don't know much about it, but yeah, it was pretty... Yeah, the effects of that virus was very unknown back then. So funny how these things sort of work out in the end, because the card counter is just, it's magnificent.
Yeah, it's one of my favourite Paul Schrader films, actually.
When I saw it, I thought, this is a director who has a lot of money and a lot of esteem
He would laugh.
in Hollywood.
That's Paul Schrader's laugh there, because he always really struggles to get things financed.
Yeah, I was really surprised. Yeah.
No, it's a very independent film, is what he always says in interviews about this.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that from the look of Card Counter. It seemed like one of those great films from a great director that's been really well recognised. And that was another thing I discovered, that Paul Schrader somehow, even though I'm quite the cinephile, has somehow flown under my radar as a director. Like, he totally has. I think the only other Paul Schrader movie I'd seen before we started doing this, when watching the Card Counter, was Touch, which we can't find anywhere, and which is apparently not I can't really remember if it was any good, because I was quite young when I saw it. Yeah, so there you go.
It was one of his few. Like, he's got a few really bad films, and that's one, I think.
I mean, I watched it, I think, because it had Christopher Walken and Skeet Ulrich, who I thought was quite cute, I think, at the time. But I remember thinking it was okay, but obviously it didn't make much of an impact on me, because I didn't start to sort of look into him as a director, as I do with other films that I'll come across and think, wow, who's this director, who's this cinematographer, who's this writer, and just like get into all this stuff.
It was very different to his other films. He's even said that he purposely made Touch and what's that other one? Oh yeah, Witch Hunt, which is like hardly anyone has seen it, because it's his only made-for-TV movie. He made those two as like comedies, which is like Paul Schrader doing a comedy is going to be quite weird anyway. But he made them to try and prove that he could make like
mainstream movies.
Yeah, more mainstream films, which is a bad mistake.
Yeah, well, he's
But I only say bad mistake in that he was on a really good kind of winning streak with Light Sleeper and Comfort of Strangers, and if he'd kept kind of making Paul Schrader films like in his style, then we would have gotten two really good films, I reckon.
Funny how that sort of happens with directors, isn't it? They have they make some really good critically acclaimed films that have a lot of merit and value, and then they'll sort of feel that they have to prove themselves with a box office smash, and those films aren't normally very good, and it kind of puts them behind themselves for a while.
He did it basically because he wants to be able to make more of those films like Light Sleeper, and by making a bigger, like a more successful film, he would get more money to be able to do that. And like for example, the Card Counter, they literally only had enough money to do like one or maybe two takes.
What?
Yeah, so it was.
That's crazy.
Oscar Isaac said that he really liked that challenge, because he'd never ever been in a film set where they could only do like one or two takes.
And so within the main actors in Card Counter, wasn't he in Star Wars, those new Star Wars films and stuff?
He was, like, and he was like the father in June as well.
Ah, yeah, he's a great actor.
The first time I saw him was in Drive. He played Carey Mulligan's husband who was in jail.
He's really, really good actor. I mean, and it's wonderful to see in the Card Counter that he has an opportunity to be the central figure of it all. It's sort of really, a lot of the movie hangs on his performance, and it's flawless. He's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm liking him more and more as an actor.
Yeah.
Yeah, he seems to have really interesting taste.
Mm.
Well, The Card Counter is a continuation of what Paul Schrader has called his Man Alone in His Room trilogy. There was originally a trilogy of films, but he's kind of continued making them over the last few years. Films like the one he wrote for Martin Scorsese, Taxi Driver, of course, which everyone knows.
That's the thing. He's a writer first and foremost, and he almost wasn't going to be a screenwriter. He was going to be a critic, and that kind of fell through. And then he did these sort of started writing films. And I don't know, how did he get into directing them then?
Well, he wrote these great pieces about Robert Bresson. On Pickpocket, which he was obsessed by, and it was a film when he first saw it. He paid to see it again and again and again, over and over. He loved it so much, and that kind of got him into the idea of making films. And his brother Leonard Schrader, he wrote a script with him called The Yakuza, and sort of a Japanese like thriller film. I mean, it's got I think it's got Robert Mitchum or someone like that in it, so it's not like Japanese really. But then Taxi Driver for Scorsese. And he did The Last Temptation of Christ.
Oh
as
wow,
well
that's a fantastic
and
story.
Bringing Out the Dead, which is really good.
I still haven't seen that one.
Seen a bit of it.
Yeah, seen a bit of it.
But yeah, then he became a director with Blue Collar, which has got Richard Pryor, Harvey Keitel, and Yaphet Kotto who's an alien. It's good. It's pretty good. It's not one of my favourite Schraders, but put him on the map anyway. And and so that's how he sort of got into directing.
That's really neat.
But yeah, not that many people know of him really, because his films aren't like I mean, he's had a few bigger hits, or he's made bigger budget films like the Exorcist prequel. But yeah, so he made these Man Alone in His Room films like Taxi Driver, American Gigolo, Light Sleeper, The Walker, which we didn't look at for this review, and First Reformed, and then The Card Counter. They're all sort of like very existential films, and very influenced by Bresson's Pickpocket.
Yeah, I started to notice this recurring theme of prisons and transcendental moments and women sort of saving men, and I was like, yeah, he's definitely working through some themes here. You can tell he loves Bresson. But it's interesting because he seems to keep trying to remake or recreate those moments. Maybe he's trying to inch closer and closer towards this sort of perfection that Bresson created, or maybe he just really likes that theme and thinks it's worthy of different viewpoints on the same topic. He's
written a book called Transcendental Film on Ozu, Dreyer and Bresson.
Yeah, Ozu's amazing.
And he's recently updated it with a new introduction, but it's like, quite a long one, like 60 pages or something, and he talks about Tarkovsky. Because he left him out of the original, I don't know why.
Strange, yeah. Well, that's like a 10-year journey if you really want to. I'm scared to do a review of Tarkovsky because,
we'll get there,
but maybe in a decade, I think.
No.
I don't want to ripen a bit more. I don't know. I just feel like.
Well, we need to at least finish his films.
Yeah,
we've still got 2 to watch.
I'm one of those people that if I've got a favourite director, I kind of intentionally don't try to see at least a couple because I like to save them for a rainy day.
No, but Tarkovsky is like the one director who you can watch over and over again and sort of like learn new things about his films and see. They're just so beautiful. I
just get so sad when I know that I've seen everything that a director's done. It's like this, like.
Honestly, I've seen Stalker 30 or 40 times, and each time I see it, it's like a totally different film. Yeah. So you don't be scared.
Okay, I'm not scared.
Yeah, but so these characters in his Man Alone in His Room films, they all go through an internal struggle. They're quite, they're alone in their rooms and they're brooding and sort of thinking about their lives a lot. And
there's no women alone though.
No, he hasn't. They're quite masculine films in a way. I mean, when you say masculine films, you think of like Steven Seagal films or something, but they're not like that, of course. They're just, he's obviously knows about himself, and he writes about himself. He's talked about his films being very autobiographical as well.
And actually, they're very interesting men. They're not your stereotypical men. They tend to have kind of neuroses and like paranoias or like aspects of themselves that they know aren't that great. They're working through something. So they're actually a really neat kind of vision of men or characterization of men because they're a lot more complex and nuanced, and they don't just sit in that sort of typical place of masculinity. So I really appreciate his male
They're
characters.
just interesting people, like as their professions as well, like a gigolo and Mishima. I mean, you can't even really, there's not a word for what he was. And people like Christopher Walken and Comfort of Strangers, and I mean even Lindsay Lohan and the Kenyans. I mean, you know, he's made a couple of films with women. Comfort of Strangers, Nastassja Richardson is really one of the main characters in it.
And Patty Hearst, she's a central figure in that, definitely.
Yeah, she's a great actor.
Yeah, and I like the way that he presents women too. Once again, they're not like this narrow sort of view of femininity at all. They're very nuanced and complex, especially Patty Hearst.
Yeah, all of his characters are very complex, and they're not all traditionally good or bad characters, you know.
Or masculine or feminine, which is, it's really refreshing. I think it's important to see these kinds of representations.
I think he takes that notion from Nietzsche, the beyond good and evil. Of his characters as well. And yeah, it's important to say with this whole transcendental moment business that he was raised, Bresson was very Catholic, by the way, who is very influenced by, but Schrader was raised in the Dutch Calvinist church, which is a big part of all of his films, but especially Hardcore, which we didn't watch for, you know, in the build up for this review, but we did watch it kind of a few months ago.
Yeah, there was the father that's looking for his lost daughter.
George C. Scott is quite a funny actor, especially in Exorcist 3. He's very, very grumpy.
There's a moment that became a real meme too, where he's kind of watching something. We won't spoil it for you.
And it's a meme, so we can spoil it. So it's been online heaps. He's watching his daughter in a porno film, but I saw a meme with where they'd replaced that footage with lots of films by Adam Sandler, and he's like, no!
Very good film, extremely good film. It really did remind me of Taxi Driver. I do think it was the most kind of Scorsese-ish film. I felt like it really fit well into that era of those kind of films. Very good, surprisingly good, very engaging and gripping, and quite, once again, very existential. His films are not the most uplifting in some ways, so I did find it kind of quite tough going if you're watching one after the other I was like, please. I was like, can we please just watch some like really just ridiculous horror now, like something.
We've been catching up.
But it's been wonderful at the same time. But yeah, his films are fairly heavy, but that is a good thing. I don't want fluff all the time. So.
Yeah, I find his film fun in a way as well. Some of them,
yeah.
Like Comfort of Strangers, I think is a lot of fun. But yeah, Hardcore was shot by Michael Chapman, who shot Taxi Driver as well.
There you go.
But it is set in LA, and Scorsese is a very New York director. Although they did actually shoot a lot of mean streets in LA, which is very weird because it's set in New York. But they used LA footage just because it was cheaper, of course. It was a very early Scorsese film. Yeah, so where are we?
We're talking about Calvinism upbringing.
Yeah.
Very, very, very strict. Wasn't allowed to watch movies and stuff. And this is the first time he finally got to watch a film with his cousins. He was quite underwhelmed. He was like, this is what the big deal's all about. This doesn't seem that shocking. But then he saw a film that sort of was a bit more full-on and shocking, and he realised that he just loves cinema. So it's interesting. Like, we didn't have a television growing up for quite a long time. My parents weren't really into television. But that was good because I did a lot of crafts and I read a lot of books, but of course this second I got my hands on like a horror novel, and I was hiding in the library from bullies, as I used to do for pretty much all my primary school and a big chunk of high school, and I found the Amityville Horror, and that's where it all began, because I was like, this makes me feel a certain type of way and I want to keep exploring this. So yeah, I went from someone who was kind of had everything sort of censored to just jumping straight into like pretty hardcore horror, and from that moment on I was just hooked. So I know what it's like to be deprived of that.
He talks about that quite a lot with his upbringing.
Yeah.
You'd have a good discussion with him.
I feel like we'd get along quite well, me and Paul Schrader, actually. I'd love to have a chat with him. We've been watching interviews with him, and he's such an interesting person.
Like he's sort of turned into the world's greatest pug human. He kind of talks like one. That's his face as well.
He's a fantastic storyteller.
Very intelligent.
He's definitely in the right industry, being such a great storyteller in life as well. Very interesting, quite strange, but in a way that I find quite pleasing.
Well, very honest, which is very refreshing.
Yes, it's very refreshing, especially in Hollywood. Yeah.
So the cinematography in Card Counter was by someone called Alexander Dion. The music score was by Giancarlo Volcano, and the songs were by Robert Turner from Black Rebel Motorcycle Club.
I like them.
Which I think he kind of probably got him to do those songs in reference to Light Sleeper, who it
was terrible music though.
Yeah, he'd asked, the reason behind that is he'd asked Bob Dylan to use some of his pre-existing songs, and originally he said yes, and then he became very difficult and said, oh, you can use this one but not that one, or part of that one, or so Schrader had to like go to someone else to kind of recreate that mood, and he asked this guy in a band I've never heard of, and it was probably a bad mistake. But I've watched that film many times, and it's grown on me a lot. The songs, I think if you see it, a few more times, you'd probably like it more. Like the first time, I found it really abrasive and jarring, but yeah, it's not too bad.
But good music in the Card Counter.
So do you want to say something about the film narrative, or?
Not really. I mean, well,
we just say that it's like a war veteran who is back in the States, and he kind of what is he? He's going to these he's a poker person and plays poker, and he takes this young guy under his wing who. Actually, if we explain the story, we're probably going to.
I think it gives it away too much. There's a really amazing who's the character that he makes that amazing actress?
The African American woman?
Yeah.
She's a comedian, and I'm not that into comedy, so I don't know can't remember her name.
I can't remember her name, but yeah, she plays a very vital role in the story as well.
Yeah,
but
she's really good. She's a big fan of Paul Schrader, which is one reason she got the role.
Oh, that makes sense. It's very kind of slow. It is a slow burn, but what it does is it is really somehow very engaging and quite tense, and it takes some turns that you wouldn't expect. So,
Willem Dafoe, isn't it?
Yes. Well. So if you think, I don't really know where this is going, I don't know about this, just hang on in there, because boy, I was really like, wow, okay, I haven't seen a film that I felt that way about for a while. So it's surprisingly tense and very, very interesting. I mean, but the thing is, it looks so gorgeous the whole time that I didn't mind the slower pace, because I got a chance to sort of breathe.
His films are always quite slow. I mean, he's back in a really good place, especially after making First Reformed,
which is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, after films like The Canyons and Dog Eat Dog, which is all right, but he's really back with a vengeance, and I'm really looking forward to this new film, Master Gardener, which is a funny title.
That's a funny title.
Joel Edgerton is the Master Gardener of the title, and he's works in a big kind of what's the word? Garden. It's like there's a bigger word, big property, and his boss is who I think he has some kind of weird relationship with, is played by Sigourney Weaver.
Oh,
which I'm really excited about.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Crikey.
So especially after these two films, I reckon it could be a really good film.
Yeah. Those First Reformed and Card Counter are just so good. They look so good. They're just executed so well. And like I said, I thought he was like some massive director that had just, gotten to
he should be.
Place.
Yeah,
he should be, definitely. I think his films have more than enough merit for him to be considered one of those great filmmakers.
That's why I'm glad we're doing this review.
Yeah, there needs to be more acknowledgement of his talent and his storytelling ability.
Speaking of storytelling, the one thing, part of the narrative that I will mention is Oscar Isaac's character. He has this very interesting habit of, he stays in motels, and he gets white toilet paper or tissue paper and puts it over everything in the motel room, so it just looks white, and it's never explained why he does it. But the reason that Schrader included that was that Ferdinando Scarfiotti, who is the production designer for American Gigolo, and he's Italian, he worked with Bernardo Bertolucci on The Conformist and pretty much all of Bertolucci's big films, and he came to America to make American Gigolo and Cat People, And when he was doing Cat People, Schrader found out that he actually did that in his motel rooms, like cover the entire room with tissue paper, because he found the rooms to be so repulsive looking that he couldn't stand looking at them.
What era was this?
This is Cat People was like 1981.
Yeah, well, the 90s decor in America was pretty hideous, so I kind of don't blame him, but wow, that's quite an
It's
extreme
such
reaction.
a great story, isn't
It's
it?
a great story. Wow.
It's great that Schrader used it.
Wow,
He
that's so
he said that he
fascinating.
was so offended by the blandness of American hotels.
I like this guy.
I love him.
That's so cool.
When you've been sleeping, I've been
Blandness.
watching. I've been watching all the films that he production designed for Bertolucci, like The Sheltering Sky. I mean, they're just so beautiful looking. Whenever there's like a hotel room or something they're staying in, that's just glorious to look at.
It's so uncomfortable. Yeah, I'm just gonna lean.
So The Card Counter was produced by Scorsese as well, who he got to kind of help with the structure, with the pacing of the film, I think, because of how they were set back by this COVID thing with the producers shutting it down. He then was able to go to Scorsese and say, "How would you change this film?" He also
That's
produced
dope.
the film. It's very cool.
It's really cool.
And one interesting bit of trivia is that The Card Counter was one of Obama's favourite films of 2021. And I was just watching a Mark Commode video where he said you should look up Obama's best of the year film lists because they're always really, really good. So I need to remember to do that
I have
tonight.
mixed feelings about Obama.
So do I, but
The whole warmongering thing is not
Yeah.
so good. But, in other respects it was good.
yeah,
Yeah. But he has interesting taste, that's for sure.
he is. So what would you give this film?
Okay, well, you do it first because you always change your
Okay.
ratings to like.
Well, it's the best Schrader film in a long time, so I'll give it a 4.
Yeah, I would say the same actually. I'd give it a 4.
Yeah, 8's pretty good.
8 hearts out of 10 hearts. That's
Yeah.
very high for both of us.
So we're going to wind it back to American Gigolo now, which opens with a really good Giorgio Moroder song featuring Deborah Harry.
Yes.
A very classic opening sequence with the music pumping over this kind of like seaside driving shot.
Convertible with the top down. Richard Gere looking sharp. Gere or Gear?
Gear.
Gear. Richard Gere, like he's on the gear. That's how I remember.
Gear,
it.
just remember Gerbil.
Don't say that. Poor guy. He seems like such a nice chap. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he does.
He does. He actually seems like a nice person.
Yeah.
Bit of a man whore for a while there, but that's fine.
He's great in that in Internal Affairs, one of my favourite 90s neo-noir.
He's so good as a baddie. He should be
Yeah.
a baddie more often.
Yeah.
He's fantastic. He's kind of got that charisma that plays off a villain very well.
So this film, as I said, was production designed by Ferdinando Scarfiotti.
It's gorgeous.
And the suits are all by Giorgio Armani as well.
Armani.
So that's a big part of why it looks so stylish.
It's gorgeous.
Schrader intentionally wanted to make a really stylish film after making Blue Collar, which, as you'll tell from the title, is quite sort of,
Austere.
well, not just austere, quite sort of working class looking. I mean, it's still sort of set in factories and, after hours with the 3 characters back at their house sort of arguing and
Yeah, no, there's a
doing
lot of
drugs.
like really lush. There's like a drug dealer's place that's all blinged out. It's gorgeous. It's got some Andy Warhols on the walls, and
Yeah.
there's some gorgeous sets and production design in that film, definitely.
And Paul Schrader originally was going to have John Travolta in the main role, which could have
I'm so
worked in
glad
some
he-
weird way, but he was already a Scientologist at that point, and he was quite used to getting his own way. I guess, was this
Spoiled.
after Saturday Night Fever? Maybe he'd gotten
So.
his taste of box office, ness, and he insisted, if he was going to do the film, on Paul Schrader giving him final cut approval, which is very weird. Some actors do it. They're always like actors I really don't like.
Jeez.
Just
That's a bit rude. It's like, oh yeah, I want to work with you as a director, but I want the final say. Like, that's not how it works.
yeah, it's weird. I mean, but Schrader's
Director a movie, which was he did though, didn't he? It was terrible.
Battlefield Earth.
Come on.
but yeah, so Schrader turned him down, which is why he didn't do the film with him. But John Travolta insisted on keeping all of his Armani suits that were custom made for him for the role.
Of course he did.
Yeah, so, and it's funny as well. I mean, that we're talking about John Travolta, so maybe it's karma or something. But Richard Gere ended up acting in 4 movies that John Travolta turned down, and they all ended up being huge hits.
Interesting.
There's An Officer and a Gentleman, Chicago, which was a big hit when it came out, and Days of Heaven, which is Terrence Malick's, one of his early films, his second film, I think. We need to watch that, actually, because it's all kind of shot during the magic hour, so it has this very beautiful glow.
Glowing. That'd be difficult to film. That must have taken a long time.
I've forgotten the cinematographer's name, but yeah, he's really, that's his most beautiful film. Sam Shepard's in it too. It's a really cool film.
What a cool concept.
Great Ennio Morricone score.
Oh yeah, sign me up. Sounds lush.
And Gere has said that he took the role due to its flirtations with gay culture, which is quite interesting because he wasn't familiar with that and he wanted to. I love actors that want to do something to learn about something they don't know about. And I don't know, I can't remember exactly what he said, but maybe you can remember what I told you. Paul Schrader said...
Paul Schrader grew up in a family that they didn't really demonstrate affection to each other. They didn't really hug. And he was very funny
when his father hugged him, he literally was shaking.
Yeah, so it was that unnatural. But he... somehow, through maybe his filmmaking or his connections, he ended up sort of going to gay clubs and hugging shirtless men and just partook in the like freedom of expression and male affection and without any sexual sort of connotations. And he just loved the dancing and the hugging and the friendliness and the openness, and it completely changed how he felt about himself, about his body, about how he touched other people, and he completely embraced it. So I guess he really respects and admires the gay culture for what it helped liberate within him and help him to sort of be a better, more happy person in general, which is so damn cool. I love
He said that his best friends for like 10 years are like gay people as well. So
that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yay. Yeah, because it's a long way to come from that sort of upbringing to that. So he's definitely a very open-minded person. Yeah. Seems like he's got quite open heart too, which is always very nice.
He's married to actor Mary Beth Hurt.
She's great. Yeah.
A lot of people have speculated about his sexuality, but they've been married for a long time, since American Gigolo. Actually.
It's weird that people who are just not the stereotypical male and just won't hang out at gay clubs and stuff are just, like that straight. Like, straight can come in a lot of different forms. You don't have to sleep with men, like to just enjoy that sort of...
I think he always tries to put himself in interesting kind of situations as well, because he went to lots of bondage clubs and stuff as well.
Good on him.
Maybe
opening up that mind, very different from his upbringing. Yeah.
I think he went to those clubs when he was researching cat people as well. Because remember those ending scenes with being tied up and stuff. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, those sort of things, those sort of situations are really like Clive Barker, he wouldn't have made Hellraiser without being exposed to the bondage gay culture. We wouldn't get all those glorious Cenobites and all their wonderful, spectacular creepiness and beauty. So, I can see how, it helps you to create a particular aesthetic that's a little bit probably more subversive and outside of the norm, but I think, it's quite refreshing to see Cinema, definitely. It's become quite iconic, those kind of movies.
You'll love this, but Stevie Nicks was originally asked to do the songs instead of Deborah Harry, but she couldn't because I think she wanted to, but I love her a lot. I've gotten used to her voice, the raspiness of it, but
it gives me the creeps. I feel a little bit nauseous when I listen to it.
I just love the songwriting in that band.
The songwriting
That's
is
what
good.
I love.
Yeah.
One of my favourite bands of that kind of 70s MOR. But she was originally going to work with Giorgio Moroder, who did the soundtrack, and he also did Cat People. He did Neverending Story and Scarface, and worked with Sparks on that #1 song in Heaven.
Cool guy. Yeah, nice.
Yes. So American Gigolo has one of those climaxes in prison that we were talking about, along with Light Sleeper as well, and a few of his other films do. I think even Comfort of Strangers might have a prison kind of ending as well. He has a lot of endings in prison, but they're very sort of religious feeling, like they feel like transcendental moments, intentionally so. And Meryl Streep turned down the role of the woman in the film, but she didn't like the tone of the film, which says a lot. Like, I think she's an amazing actor, but I find the films that she's been in quite sort of
Safe?
Yeah, safe and quite throwaway, a lot of them. Quite light. I'd love to see her in some sort of heavier
Something
roles.
grittier, yeah.
Yeah.
So should we review it? Sorry.
Rate it.
Rate it!
Yep.
Should we rate it?
What would you give that?
Maybe
I'd probably give it like a 3. Something.
Yeah,
It's good.
It's good. It is good. It's interesting. I think interesting subject matter. So yeah, I'd give it a 3. So 6 hearts out of 10.
Yeah, personally, I'd probably give it a 7 out of 10. But yeah, you do you.
Sweet. Oh yeah, we better change the reels now. So we'll be back with a whole bunch more.
Second part.
The second part, part 2 of the Paul Schrader Fest. Coming right back.
See you soon.